This is ASMR Sleep Station number 19. Thank you for downloading. Sorry it's been a while. I've decided to not make excuses, so sorry it's been a while. I think I'm gonna do some reading, and first I'll check the reviews. If you haven't heard this before, I'm just a person that records themselves whispering, and it's supposed to make you relax and hopefully drift off and fall asleep or get relaxed or whatever it is that you're trying to do. It wasn't until I started recording this that I realized I make smacking noises with my mouth, and that's something that always bothered me when I watch people giving presentations or when they are wearing a mic, and you can really hear those sounds. And it's funny, I never thought that I did that, but now I know that I do. I said that because I just made a smacking noise, and I'll probably cut it out because I'm trying to make these things as easy on the ear as possible. So if you've never heard this before, which I'm guessing there's a fair amount of people who download this and have never heard it, because there's slightly more downloads every month. So that's my assumption. If that's true, then you should know that this show doesn't really have much of a format. Sometimes I read stuff, sometimes I just talk a lot. I don't really care. I'm making this for people who are relaxed by whispering and don't want to think much. And I want this to be remote. That's what I was thinking about. Recently, I kept daydreaming about what I would record, and it was a couple of weeks ago. I never ended up making a recording, as you can tell, because it's been a while. And I was thinking, what things would I talk about? I couldn't come up with anything innovative, but I did realize that it would be best if I don't talk about real things or current events. I guess news. Things like news would be bad. My opinions on, I guess, anything that would make you more grounded. So I'm going to try my best to make what I talk about more remote, more distant, because that's, at least for me, what helps people unplug. If I keep talking about things that remind you of your life and what's going on, and you're not absorbed into what I'm actually saying, or maybe your mind is drifting back towards things that bring you stress, then this isn't working. So that's going to be the goal, or I'll see how this works. If you've been listening to this and downloading for first off, thank you, and secondly, I'm sure you realize how much this is a work in progress. Let's go through the customer ratings. There's now 43 ratings. Holy cow. That's crazy. I won't go through the distribution in too much detail. Going from 5 to 1 stars, the numbers are 287512. That's pretty favorable. Can't complain about that. And Miss Sally 89 on July 13th said it works every time I'd live it. I think she meant love it more if the recordings are longer, waiting for the next one. That was a 5-star review. That's very encouraging. Yeah. I'll try to make it maybe closer to an hour. I usually shoot for 30 or 40 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour. So this one, I'll really try to make an effort to make it longer. If I don't bore myself too much, that might happen. Not only that, but it's tiring in a weird way to not make too much noise. And I might run out of stuff to cover. Although I could fill it in with reading. I'll see how far I can get. It is a little tiring, and I've already had a full day, but that's okay. It sounds like I'm whining. I don't want to be a whiner. Prior to that, there was another 5-star review from Julia with, I think, 6 J's in her name. July 7th. Another one titled, Love It. It's very relaxing, but as I'm listening, I can't help but laugh at some of the things you say. It's a good thing. I'm not complaining. I'm trying to think if I cracked any jokes on the last time I made a recording. I guess that's okay. It shouldn't matter too much if I'm making you laugh. I suppose that's relaxing in a way. Hopefully you weren't trying to sleep. I feel bad if you're trying to sleep. I think that's just my personality. I'm not good at detecting sarcasm or taking, I guess, like metaphorical or figurative statements. Everything is, I don't know what I'm trying to say. What am I saying? I often say things that are funny on accident, and people laugh, and I don't understand why they're laughing. That is a very constant thing in my life, so hopefully I'm not being too humorous. I'm not trying to be funny at all, but I think for whatever reason, my personality has a dryness that comes off as unless I was saying something that I thought was going to be funny. I don't remember though. But either way, I know it's not a complaint, so that's good. And there is a review that I don't remember if I read. So, let's see. On July 2nd, Floppy Disk 7 said, really great, 5-star review. This podcast is great because it's good to listen to before I go to bed. It makes me feel chill and relaxed to keep up the good work. I think that's it. I did it again. I smacked. Thank you to all the people that recently left reviews or ratings, or both. I really appreciate that. You are literally the fuel to this show. I think if there were nothing but discouraging emails or reviews by this point, I would have just stopped, because that means this experiment wouldn't have gone as planned. So, thank you very much, everybody that's supported this show. And Ian sent in emails recently. Just today, somebody sent an email. I decided not to name email senders, but somebody said something encouraging, and they were basically waiting for another episode because it's been a while. So that kind of gave me the push to record, although I have been thinking about it. Honestly, I've been getting into a routine of just distracting myself like crazy on my free time. And I think I'm getting over this slump where I'm wasting time browsing the internet and reading about things that aren't important to me. So, like always, I'm trying to trim the fat and really treat myself with more respect and do the things that I want to have accomplished instead of things that make me feel bad, like spending half the day browsing the internet or watching TV. I think watching TV is one of the worst things. Very good in moderation, and there's so many good TV shows to watch right now. That's something that I could talk about. Actually, before I talk about TV shows, I should talk about the show's ranking. Last time I mentioned the show had a ranking in the health or the alternative health area on iTunes, and I thought it was somewhere in the top 100 or so. It's actually like 270 or somewhere much lower. So here's why. While I was looking for the rankings, I saw a another ASMR show in the alternative health area, and I don't know if I was aware that it was there before, but um, now I know, and I'd seen this show, and I know I knew when I started doing this there was another show or two that were ASMR podcasts, and I didn't think that was that big of an issue. But when I looked at the show's description, it is exactly the same as the one I made, and they've been doing it for what looks like years longer. So, not to say that I can't do the same thing, or that it's a problem that there's two podcasts doing the same thing, but it was surprising, and I don't know why, but it was a little bit discouraging. I guess because I didn't realize there was another show with the exact same angle of trying to bore the listener that I did not know. So that was a little odd. I don't know why, but that made me want to reevaluate things. And I thought about it, and it shouldn't matter. I'm not going to let it stop me, and I don't see myself in competition with the show in any way. If we were in a relationship that was dependent on money or the selling of goods or something economical, then that might be a concern. But I'm not selling anything, and I don't think they're really selling anything either. So, I guess my only concern was that my show, this podcast, is more redundant in some way, not needed. But that shouldn't matter, because independently of what other people are doing, I've still received support for recording this. So I don't know why I brought that up. Because of the rankings were much different than I initially reported, and I found out there's other people doing the exact same thing I do, although I haven't listened to it. I don't think I'll ever listen to it. That might freak me out for whatever reason. Might make me, it might affect the way I make my recordings, and I don't really want to be affected that way. If I find out they're doing something similar, or even something different, then it might change the way I do things. So, I'm not even gonna listen to it. So, going back to, oh yeah, let's see if I can find out what I was gonna look up the rankings, and I see audio alternative health. There's was 200. Maybe it was. Now I don't know how to look this thing up. Oh, maybe it was just in regular health. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't know how to find it now. Wow, there's a plastic surgery podcast. That's odd. I wonder what that sounds like. Weird. What do you podcast about plastic surgery? The medical aspect of it. Maybe they have testimonials. Plastic surgery is important. People always think about rich people upgrading their body parts, but plastic surgery, which I think comes from rhinoplasty, is very, very important for people that get in accidents. And I know somebody who's a plastic surgeon, and they volunteer their services at some kind of clinic for certain types of I guess accident victims. Probably a lot is from accidents. People that need like a facial reconstruction after they get in an accident. That's pretty noble work, since people are quite attached to their faces. But I guess, I don't know, does plastic surgery entail more than facial surgery? I'm not sure. I have no idea where to find out the show's ranking. And like I just said, it really doesn't matter, does it? So I'm gonna let that go. And I'm going to try not to indulge caring and comparing about other podcasts. I suppose at the core of it, I just wanted to make it known that I know that there's other people doing the exact same thing I'm doing. And that's cool. Cool with me. I don't know if, I'm also checking my email right now. I'm trying to look at what this, I cannot figure out what this is. Man, you know, life is weird and technology's progressed when you can't tell if something is a real thing or a video game. I got some kind of, I don't know, oh, it's a video game. I got some kind of ad from a video game. I can't even tell if it's like a real thing. That was weird. Alright. So, I think I talked about everything I wanted to talk about. There was a few people that wrote emails in the past 2 or 3 months. Thank you to those people again. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna see what. Oh, I was gonna try to find out what the downloads were looking like. I think this might be one of the few podcasts that actually gives some type of status report as as time goes on. I think the downloads are about the same. They go up and down every week. With this hosting service, you get little, I guess they're daily stats on a daily basis. And that one day still sticks out a lot. May 16th. I don't know what happened that day, but there was like thousands of downloads. And let's see, one last catching up thing. This is, let's see here. It's on Podbay, Stitcher. I don't know if this is Podcast Chart. TuneIn Radio, I don't know that one. Yarn FM podcast name. I don't even remember submitting it to these places. I submitted it to a couple of random, I guess, listing websites. I don't even think I'm finding them. Pod Gallery. I don't know what that is. Hopefully you're asleep by now, because a good amount of time has passed by and I haven't even got to the reading yet. I wonder if these websites have stats on them. I'm always curious where people are downloading this from. Alright, I think that's enough of that. I just checked my email and what else? Okay. I was drinking some rye whiskey. I was trying that out, and my ice cubes melted. It got pretty watered down. I don't know if I'm a fan of rye whiskey. But that's what I'm drinking right now. Okay. Oh, was I going to talk about? I don't know if 12 Monkeys is finished. I've been trying to watch. Here are all the shows. The shows that I like. 12 Monkeys, Black Mirror. That's worth watching. If you haven't seen that, everybody should check that out. Game of Thrones, of course. I'm back in season 3. I haven't caught up with it. There was one more. Daredevil. I was trying to watch that too. And then for whatever reason, I've been watching reruns of Cheers. What was that from? The 70s, early 80s. It was either late 70s or early 80s. So, I watch these things. I guess if it's targeted watching, then it's not really a problem. So, I'll rephrase what I said earlier. Sitting around and just flipping through the channels, although it's beneficial to unwind in that way sometimes. It can really suck my time away, and I'll just do that. I'll just be sitting around and I'll turn on the TV, or I'll start browsing the internet and watching things that I don't care about, or reading about things that I don't care about. There's so much spam out there. Reality TV kind of seems like spam sometimes. Cheers went from 1982 to 1993. That's what the internet says. It's kind of funny. I don't know why, but it's interesting. In an old way. Alright, let's read something. I don't know where I left off. I had the paper on quantum non-locality experiments, and then there was another paper. I don't know why this is in here. The implications of experimental violation of Bell's inequalities for local realism. That's a related paper, but I don't know. I don't know if I even started that one. Yeah, this will be a long, long pursuit. Eventually, I'd like to make it to the quantum eraser experiments, which make my head explode when I think about it. Okay, so non-locality. I think I read through at least the first two sections. Did I read through 3? I don't remember. I should keep track of this. I'll start off on section 4 though. It's not like it should matter to you. You're just trying to get relaxed and sleep, so you shouldn't really be paying attention. Okay. Well, we'll start out from here. This is titled Quantum Non-Locality in Two Photon Experiments at Berkeley. And this was published in 94. It came out of the Berkeley Department of Physics, but there was a couple of other scientists involved. Raymond Chow. I don't know how to say that. Maybe Chiao. I'm not sure. That guy is from Berkeley. Paul Quiot. He is from Austria. And Ephraim Steinberg is at NIST Physics Department in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So those are the authors. And hopefully that clicking isn't too crazy loud. I need to make this full screen to read it. 1 second, I'll be right back. Alright, I had to switch from the whiskey to some Dalwhinnie Scotch, which I really like so far. Okay, so let's continue on with section 4. Let me make sure it's recording. Okay. Let's see. Alright, section 4. Now I don't know. What happened there. Okay. This is titled The Franzen Experiment, and Figure 7 shows apparatus used at Berkeley to perform the Franzen experiment. And how would I describe that? They have a laser, and it goes through a crystal that splits the beam through a cylindrical lens, and then each beam goes on 2 separate paths. And I think it'll explain the setup in the first paragraph. So that's the beginning of the section. I keep bumping the microphone. Okay. The Franzen experiment allows an examination of Bell's inequality for energy and time, a violation of which implies that photons do not necessarily possess a well-defined energy nor a well-defined time of emission before measurement. Our experiment is sketched in Figure 7. That's the one I just described. Similar experiments were performed by Brendel et al. And by Rarity and Tapster. The correlated photons are directed to separate but identical Mach-Zehnder-like interferometers in which they are allowed to take either a short path or a long path. These interferometers can have their path length differences adjusted by means of trombone prisms in their long paths and a wave plate, and then of interferometer 2. Okay. There, I did it again. I keep making smacking noises. Okay, there is no first order interference inside a single interferometer because the coherence lengths of the photons, 50 micrometers or micrometers, are much smaller than the 63 centimeter path length differences in the interferometers. However, there is a second order, i.e. 2-photon interference observable in coincidence detection between detectors D1 and D2. We shall use Feynman's rules for interference observable in coincidence detection between detectors D1 and D2. Oh wait, I just reread that. Feynman's rules for interference to calculate the probability of coincidence detection. The indistinguishable processes here are 1. The short, and 2. The long process, where both photons take their interferometer short or long paths respectively. The distinguishable process here are 3. The short, long, and 4. The long, short process, since the delays between the clicks in quotation trace events from one another as well as from processes 1 and 2. In principle, and also in practice, we are able to reject the distinguishable clicks by using a sufficiently narrow coincidence timing window in our electronics. We are thus left with only 2 indistinguishable processes, 1 and 2, for which we must first add the probability amplitudes and then take the absolute square. Hence, the probability of a given coincidence detection is given by the expression. I cannot read that equation. I'd have to look up what some of these symbols even are. If you really need to know, you could look it up, but you should be falling asleep. Okay, where the first term inside the absolute value corresponds to the short process, and the second term to the long process, the beam splitters are assumed to be 50-50 throughout, and a pi/2 phase shift for reflection is assumed. Here, the phases, I don't know if those are thetas, theta 1 and theta 2. I don't know why, but I'm gonna double check that. They look like lowercase thetas. No, that's not a theta. That's, it looks like a phi. Yeah, I think those are phis. Okay. I don't know why I'm trying to get this right. It really doesn't matter. Here the phases phi1 and phi2 represent the phase differences between the short and long arms of interferometers 1 and 2 respectively. Note that the equation implies a fringe visibility of 100%, i.e. perfect zeros at the minima in coincidence detection. The meaning of these minima is that the 2 spatially separated photons behave in an anti-correlated fashion. If one is transmitted at the final beam splitter, then the other is reflected. The meaning of the maxima equation is that 2 photons behave in a correlated fashion. Either both are transmittal in the final beam splitter, or both are reflected. The behavior of the twins depends on the settings of the separate phase shifters. The phases in our experiment were varied continuously using piezoelectrically driven trombone arm in one interferometer, as well as discretely in increments of 90 degrees using a quarter wave plate in the other interferometer, phi2. Note that in principle the phases could even be set after the photons had entered the interferometers. And figure 8 is described as interference fringes in our Franzen experiment for different phase shiftings of the quarter wave plate. Phi2 equals minus 90 degrees, and phi2 equals 0 degrees, and it just looks like interferometer phase shift on the x-axis, and on the y, coincidence counts per 24 seconds. And it looks like 2 out of shift next part will explain it. In Figure 8, we present our latest data. The mere existence of interference fringes means that one cannot know, even in principle, the actual emission times of the photons, for otherwise their arrival times at the detectors would indicate whether the long or short paths have been taken, and there would no longer be two interfering processes. See the following section. Bell's inequality for this experiment is violated by fringes which vary sinusoidally with phi1 plus phi2 and have visibility greater than 70.7%, which equals 1 over the square root of 2. Once certain reasonable assumptions about uncounted photons are made, in our experiment we observed fringes with the expected dependence only on the sum of the phases, with visibilities exceeding the limit by as many as 28 standard deviations, using a fair sampling assumption and the symmetry properties of the interferometer. In particular, that the coincidence rate of the unused ports of Figure 7, that was an equation, is equal to the used ports, an assumption ported by test done with the third detector not shown in the figure. We can directly obtain the value of Bell parameter S from the coincidence rates obtained at two values. Coincidence rates obtained at two values, each of phi1 and phi2. S is a measure of strength of the correlations between two particles, evaluated for the four combinations of the two values of phi1 and phi2, and according to the Clauser-Horn-Shimony-Holt form of Bell's inequality, satisfy the absolute value of S is greater or less than 2 for any local realistic model. For appropriate choices, phi1 45 degrees and 135 degrees, and phi2 0 degrees and minus 90 degrees, we obtain S equals minus 2.63 plus or minus 0.08, clearly displaying quantum non-locality. That's the end of section 4. Maybe we should savor this and stretch it a little more. Wow, there's actually a lot. Now there's a lot of diagrams too. The conclusion is in section 8, so there's still a few more things to cover. So that was the Franzen experiment, and next we'll go to the quantum eraser, and we don't have that much time left, but I noticed that this microphone picks up really low frequencies when I bump the table. If you ever see like DJs at a radio station or people recording vocals, and you see the microphone is on like a boom arm and it's suspended over their working area, I never really thought about it that much, but if you know how sensitive microphones are, you realize why. You want to get that microphone far away from anywhere you could bump it, because it sounds terrible. If you were sleeping, me bumping this, any of these surfaces around me might wake you up. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. Let's see here. I'm gonna check my video game. I got this 15-year-old Dalwhinnie Scotch, and it's a really good. It must be a kind of a barley taste to it. Very well-rounded flavor, not too intense or complex. I think it's a nice, simple scotch. I'm trying to see if I can find their website. I did the same thing for a Kilchoman, which is really good. Somebody recently told me that maybe I was Scottish in a past life. Of course, I don't believe in things like that, but it's an interesting thought. Probably a way of saying, I like Scotch too much. No, maybe not. I like the way Scotland looks, but I don't know if I like the way it feels. It looks very wet and sometimes very cold, but beautiful. Maybe one day I'll go there. I can't find their website. Dalwhinnie. Or is it Dalwhinnie? I don't know what this, I guess it's a website for touring their distillery. They're in Cairngorm National Park in the heart of the Highlands. Oh, I guess there's a lot of distilleries there. There's like a whole type of tourism for looking at Scotch distilleries. It's like they do the same thing with wineries. If you go to wine country, they'll have these long tours where you go to distilleries and I can't find much information on them. I'm not sure if they have I don't know where they're like. They must have an official website somewhere. They're on the whiskey.com website. That lists all the different distilleries. Still can't find their homepage though. Oh, wow. That's their is 4.238062 and 56.940128. That sounds very exact. Oh, here's something. The Dalwhinnie Distillery sits at the heart of the majestic Cairngorms National Park in Scottish Highlands. The distillery does a range of official bottlings, with its signature single malt being the 15-year-old, although the distillery also produces a 20-year-old and 36-year-old, among other distillers' editions. Almost all bottlings are official ones. Independent bottlings haven't been seen for decades. Only a minor percentage of single malt distilled at Dalwhinnie is marketed as a single malt, with the majority being used in the Diageo-owned Buchanan and black and white blends. Due to its high altitude setting, the distillery today also fulfills a dual function as a working meteorological station with readings being taken daily. That is fascinating. The weather and Scotch distillery all in one stop. I wonder if that happens anywhere else in the world. Wow, so whiskey.com, that's without an E, for whiskey fans out there, has a lot of information on them. They operate with a single wash still at 17,000 liters and a single spirit still at 14,000 liters. Both were made by Abercrombie and Company and have a traditional still shape with a large bulbous base and gradually narrowing neck. The neck of the pot is very tall. This allows the whiskey to separate very well. It creates a very fine distilled spirit. That's interesting. It's the third highest distillery in Scotland. Very interesting. Oh yeah, maybe I could find tasting notes. 15-year. I think this might have tasting notes. I'm so bad at tasting things. I suppose I'm good at knowing if I like it or not. Oh, that was a joke. I definitely told a joke there. Okay. Oh, fruitiness, vanilla honey. Oh man. Vanilla. Yeah, maybe a little vanilla. Citrus fruit. I didn't get that. passed away. Funeral tomorrow. Deep sympathy. Weird. Marengo. Algiers. I cannot figure out what the... we'll save that for another time. Okay, let's see if we can find the book that I wanted to read. It might not be on here. I have the paper book, but I haven't been able to find it. You know what? I'll just go on the internet and I'll read the beginning of it. I really like reading the beginnings of books because I'm a wannabe author or wannabe writer. Yeah, because there's a difference. Writers write, authors are published. Maybe I want to be published. Maybe that was a Freudian slip. I'm getting way too introspective right now. That's probably the scotch. I wanted to read, because I mentioned it an episode or two ago, Fire in the Deep, published in 1993 by Werner Vinci, or Werner Vinge, or Werner Winge. I don't know how to say his name, but I think I could read the first page, which I've done before on this. If you're still awake, you better pass out soon. I hope so. Because this is like somebody reading to you when you're a little kid. Oh, I never noticed that. It has a diagram inside the cover. I wonder if the paperback version has that. This is great though. Oh, it has a prologue. That's right. I don't know how I forgot. How did I forget that? This prologue, if you're a science fiction fan and you haven't read this, then you need to read it immediately. If you're not a science fiction fan, but you kind of like it, then you should still read this, because I remember when I first read this prologue, it was packed with more story than some entire books. How is that possible? Because this author has a perfect balance of very hard science fiction, which is, for people who don't read it a lot, it's very technical and has a lot of detail and gets into the mechanics and the technology and the physics of things. Really good storytelling, great characters, but just loads of very, very fun, classic science fiction ideas. Not classic in that it's not by our standards a classic, but classics like ideas that always come up. So it's really good. I'll read the first page and then I have to go. So fall asleep. So this is how it starts. How to explain, how to describe even the omniscient viewpoint quails. A singleton star, reddish and dim, a ragtag of asteroids on a single planet, more like a moon. That That's the first two sentences. If you exclude the first three that are in italics. So think about that. What to start, how to explain, how to describe it. Even the omniscient viewpoint quails. And then the italics end. A singleton star, reddish and dim, a ragtag of asteroids. Dropping stuff here. Sorry. A ragtag of asteroids, a single planet, more like a moon. In this era, the star hung near the galactic plane just beyond the beyond. The structures on the surface were gone from normal view, pulverized into a regolith across a span of eons. The treasure was far underground beneath a network of passages in a single room filled with black. Information at the quantum density undamaged. Maybe 5 billion years had passed since the archive was lost to the nets. The curse of the mummy's tomb, a comic image from mankind's own prehistory, lost before time. They had laughed when they said it, laughed with joy at the treasure, and determined to be cautious just the same. They would live here a year or 5. The little company from Strom, the archaeologist programmers, their families and schools. A year or 5 would be enough to hand-make the protocols to skim the top and identify the treasure's origin in time and space, to learn a secret or two that would make Stromley realm rich. And when they were done, they would sell the location, perhaps build a network link, but chancier that this was beyond the beyond. Who knew what power might grab what they'd found? So now there was a tiny settlement, and they called it the High Lab. It was really just humans playing with an old library. It should be safe, using their own automation, clean and benign. The library wasn't a living creature or even possessed of automation, which here might be something more, far more than human. They would look and pick and choose and be careful not to be burned. Humans starting fires and playing with flames. The archive informed the automation. Data structures were built. Recipes followed. A local network was built faster than anything on Strom, but surely safe. Nodes were added, modified by other recipes. The archive was a friendly place with hierarchies of translation keys that led them along. Strom itself would be famous for this. 6 months passed, a year. I'm gonna stop now, but if you're aware of the general tropes of science fiction, then you kind of see what's coming next. This is unlike anything I've ever read, because that's the first 4 paragraphs of the prologue, and they're getting into an automated, self-aware artificial intelligence from a found library that kind of cleverly instructed humans to assemble it by recipes, or maybe didn't really instruct them, but they just used it and implemented it by its own technology, which would probably happen inevitably by any species that did not have that understanding or technology. It's like somebody dropping a formula for quantum computers on Earth in the 1980s. What would we do with it? We wouldn't let it sit there. We would build it and it happen. So, um, that's just the beginning of the prologue. I'll read it later. I now have forgotten why I brought up A Fire Upon the Deep in the first place, but, and I haven't even read the sequel, so, that makes me kind of lame, and, probably not the best, science fiction reader I could be, but, there's a lot to read, there's a lot to catch up with, but if you like, good stories with technology or science in them, and, innovative storytelling, then this is definitely worth reading. Fire Upon the Deep has some great stuff in it, a lot of which I've probably forgotten, but this prologue really knocks your socks off. You gotta be in the right mood to read it. I think even if you're a science fiction fan, you kinda gotta be ready for something on this scale, because it's pretty epic in its scale, and there's a lot of things happening that involve entire species and technology on a galactic scale, on a universal scale. Those are really big topics, but this book handles it perfectly. If you like reading like I do, and even if you're not a sci-fi fan, I think you could appreciate at least this prologue. It's smooth. It's a slow introduction. It has just the right amount of intrigue in it, and for all intents and purposes of a prologue, it's perfect. Even though that's something you see less and less of. Prologues are kind of going out of fashion, but this book has a prologue, and the prologue is great because it really opens that door, kind of sets the tone, and shows you something that you want to know what happens. So, that's enough. I hope you're asleep right now. I hope you're doing well. Maybe I'll be more